Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our Salesforce Service Cloud training. And today we're going to be looking into knowledge management setup. So before I continue, I just want to quickly go through the curriculum again. So we know where we are and why we're doing this today. So according to Salesforce, this is what we're supposed to know for our Salesforce Service Cloud exam. I'm skipping this because this requires you to understand a lot of things, and I'll be making this a project. Okay, the project will require you to determine an appropriate solution and do some trade-off to create that solution. Okay, so this will be our last, I'll call it our last topic. And number 2, it has a very big weighting. And I don't think based on what we have I've taught you guys till date, you probably wouldn't be able to understand it. So I want to put it to the last topic, okay? So I'm going to knowledge management today. And next week, we're going to go into case management that would include interaction and other things that you need to know. So basically, if you complete case management next week, that includes interaction channel, like the omni-channel, the entitlement and everything, then we're pretty much done. All the things like this you already know in terms of reporting and analytics, and the service console is something we are going to use as part of our solution design, okay? I've introduced service console several times, but then again, I'm going to introduce it during the solution design, okay? So now I'll be focusing on knowledge management for today, and hopefully next week, we're going to go into case management. So now that I introduce the approach to this training, I will quickly go into, not go to my trailer, let's go into the slides. I think we have a few things we need to cover before we go into the trailer hands-on session. So let's go into what Salesforce expects us to know from knowledge management. Salesforce expects us to know or explain knowledge article lifecycle, including creation, publishing, consumption, and feedback. Salesforce also expects us to know, given business process requirements, determine the appropriate approach to manage knowledge adoption and maintenance. So how do you manage knowledge? So I'm going to explain what knowledge is, and I'm going to explain how you manage knowledge within a business setup. Then Salesforce expects us to know, given a set of requirements, determine how to configure data categories, article record types, articles, and publishing workflow, okay? And also we need to know how to migrate data. What are the strategies to migrate data from one knowledge base to the other, okay? So let's quickly go into some of the key things we're gonna be learning. So basically, today is just gonna be setup of knowledge and how it works. Then you understand the knowledge lifecycle, how you can create your own knowledge. Then more importantly, the data categories and data category groups. This is probably one of the most important feature of knowledge, because knowledge is just like another object in Salesforce. However, this feature is so crucial that it helps you differentiate knowledge from any other object in Salesforce, okay? Then we do some knowledge migration strategy, and obviously we have the hands-on session that would show us a typical case study of how knowledge can be used in a business, okay? So now let's go into I'll just go through maybe some few explanation, then we quickly go into the hands-on because this is more practical than theoretical, okay? So what is Salesforce knowledge? And Salesforce knowledge is just a knowledge management system that helps you solve issues or answer questions of external customers, as well as internal employee. What do I mean by that? So if you are working in an environment and you realize, oh, we are getting repeated number of questions regarding certain area of our business, or when customers buy new equipment, they do not know how to install that equipment, or anything that has to do with repeated questions that can be structured, that can be categorized to make better presentation. So anyone, even the internet team, can read and understand and explain to the customer that this is the problem and this is a solution to the problem. So knowledge is just a repository of information. So you store the information for agents to read and understand and provide answers to the customer, or you can actually attach that answer to an email for the customer, or you can present the solution on a website for the customer to read, okay? So knowledge is very broad, but the most important thing is knowledge is information. Knowledge is storing. Knowledge management is a process which you store and present information for the customer. So when you talk about knowledge, majorly you talk about articles. So if you've been to a website before, you will see articles whereby you see frequently asked questions, how to do certain things, or maybe a blog post. Everything that you can read is obviously an article according to Salesforce. So article can just include information, okay? Information about anything you're doing. So if you're writing to tell a customer how to install whatever new tool that you've just released, new product you've just released, is just an information. So if you're creating knowledge, technically, essentially what you're doing is you're writing an article, okay? And Salesforce helps you to use an article to improve operations, improve service, okay? And for you to use knowledge, you need to have an extra license. If you're on Essential Edition, you only have read ability for knowledge. But if you're on Unlimited or if you're on Professional, you have the read write, and you require that feature license in order to do some of the things you need to do with knowledge, okay? So knowledge is not something you just get out of the box. It's something most likely you have to pay for. Now, let's go into more features about knowledge. Like I said earlier, data categories and data category groups are the key thing that makes knowledge special. Knowledge could just have been an object where an article or where information is being stored. But the fact that we have data categories and we have data groups, it becomes easier to hide articles from people. For instance, if you want to process billing information, these are the procedure for processing billing information. Maybe you have a token that you need to use to approve a billing or override a billing decision, and you don't want anybody to see that token, okay? You can put that token within an article, but you make sure that the article can only be read by a particular set of people that have this set of profile. You can achieve that using data categories and data category groups, okay? You can use profiles, roles, permission set, and the like to prevent articles from being read by anyone. In addition to that, we have what are called topics. Topics are just words or phrases. If you're familiar with Twitter, you will know that you can use hashtags. Hashtags are tags that are associated to a particular discussion. Okay, so now that you are talking about maybe Ukraine or whatever it is, you can write a topic and categorize all articles around Ukraine or around product improvement or around billing or around services or whatever product you're creating. You can categorize them together using topics. So whenever they click on that topics, all articles under that topic would come up, okay? So knowledge gives you that feature which you can use. Remember, we have data categories, we have topics. In addition, we have what they call the validation status. When you create article, you can choose not to publish that article, or you can decide to publish the article. When you publish the article, it becomes visible, okay? And if you don't publish an article, it becomes a draft. That means you're the only person that can see that draft, or someone that has the ability to see a draft can see the draft. However, you can also include what they call the validation status. As this article being validated by a superior, so if we're building a contact center and we realize, oh, there's a new issue that has been reported by a customer. We don't have this as an article yet. No one knows about this issue. Let's write an article about this issue. Now you've written an article. there should be a process for moving that article into public view. Maybe you need to send it to your manager for approval. Then you can use a validation status or a workflow rule that determines whether an article is using an approval process to determine whether an article is published or not, or the validation status of an article is approved or not approved, verified or not verified, whatever pick list value you want to use, okay? So that's one of the features of article. Again, I've already said about permission. Permissions and data categories, they work hand in hand. So you can determine whether someone gets to see an article or not based on the permission of that article. We're going to see how everything works shortly. Then we have what they call the quick test, attachment to case or emails, meaning that whenever a case has been solved, you can attach an article to that case. What that means is that in future, if someone is looking at a case and they want to find out how that case was solved, you can read about it using the article attached to the case. Previously, this was called solution in Salesforce. Solution and knowledge, a little bit different. Knowledge is more robust. Solution is just very basic, okay? So, before, it used to be called solution, but now Salesforce is pushing or recommending you to use knowledge, okay? In addition to that, when you edit a knowledge, you are technically creating a different version of that knowledge. Let's quickly go back to what I call the knowledge life cycle. The knowledge life cycle. Okay, that's the next slide. Sorry. So we're creating a version for that article. Okay. And in addition to that, we have what they call the rating. That means you can create a knowledge article and users that read that knowledge article can rate it 5-star, 3-star, 2-star, meaning that this knowledge article was helpful. This knowledge article is not helpful. Okay. And you can also vote on knowledge article. You can thumbs up, you can thumbs down, and you can do whatever you want to do with knowledge article. So there's so many features about knowledge, okay? And how do all these features, how do they kind of like come into play? How do they collaborate together? And that's where we get to see the knowledge life cycle, okay? This is something I just made up. However, according to Salesforce, this is the knowledge life cycle. The first thing you do is create knowledge, meaning that you've seen an opportunity to be documented. You've seen a new area of question from a customer that you have not addressed before in the business. You will create the knowledge. In between creating the knowledge and publishing the knowledge, there could be a process here, but we don't know. We don't know what the business has recommended to creating knowledge article. For instance, you can assign for review and approval by the business, your supervisor, or whoever the person might be. You can assign for a review. Then after you assign, they approve, you publish. So what happens when you publish an article? Someone needs to read the article and they can find the article useful, or they can find the article to be obsolete. When an article becomes obsolete, what do you need to do? You need to either update the article, okay, or you delete the article, but you delete is like the last stage of the life cycle of an article. You update the article, or you get feedback from the users. You update the article by just getting feedback about the article. This article is no longer valid. This is not how you log in into single login anymore. This has been changed. It's no longer 2.5, it's no longer 2.50, it's no longer this. You update that article, because if you don't update that article, someone else will be reading it and they wouldn't make sense out of it, or they will be having conflicting information. Okay? After updating the article, whatever happens in future, if this article is no longer applicable to the business, if this article is no longer useful for the business, what happens? You archive the article. But if it's totally useless, you delete the article. So the life cycle is very simple. You create, you publish, you update, you archive, and you delete. But in between these operations, there might be some workflow, some approvers, some things that the business has put in place to stop you from doing this. For instance, before you delete an article, they might put a workflow or an approval process. Only few people can delete an article. For instance, the CRED permission also works for knowledge, meaning that if you don't have a delete permission, you cannot delete an article. Okay, so you should know this is just something I made up, but this is the official one from Salesforce. Okay, and we have consideration for building knowledge base. So why would you even think about building knowledge base? What is the purpose? What kind of information do you want to publish? If you don't know the information you want to publish, then you wouldn't have a structure to building that knowledge base. So you need to know, do I want to publish a frequently asked question section on our website? Or do I want to publish a procedure? This is how to do this. So how to. Or do I want to just publish an article about improvement in business? So you need to know the kind of publication you want. That will now determine your record types and your page layout. Remember, record types and page layout would help you determine the fields you can display when collecting or when writing the article. Okay, so the type of publication you want to make, frequently asked questions, procedures, manuals, guidelines, would determine the page layout, record types, and the fields you want to put or you want to enter when creating the article. Then we have what they call, we're talking about consideration, right? Do you have an existing knowledge base? So now that you want to buy or you want to introduce knowledge into a business, have you asked the business if they have an existing knowledge base? Because the existing knowledge base will now determine, do we want to import knowledge from an external system or we want to create from scratch? If you want to import knowledge from an external system, they have what they call, Salesforce has what they call the knowledge import tool wizard, which you need the Salesforce support to help you activate. However, if you want to start from scratch, it's much easier, right? But then again, if you have a bunch of data somewhere you need to bring into the system, then you need to determine what you want to do, because the business will tell you, we don't want you to create new knowledge base. We want you to import this knowledge base because we already have existing knowledge somewhere in the external system. Now, do we have the required fields? How can we find articles? This is also very important. How do you want to structure your knowledge or your articles? For instance, if you are working for Blackforce, and in Blackforce, we have the learning side. The learning are the courses we offer, okay? Then we have what we call the billing side. The billing are the subscription. Then we have what they call the technology, the single login issues. How would you categorize this stuff such that anyone that is having issues with single login would be able to go to single login related article? How would anyone with billing issue will be able to go to the subscription article to find out how to resolve their billing issue? And remember, this is not just about the customer. This is not just about the students of Blackforce. It is about the agent, the operations team. How can we make operation team work seamlessly without asking their superior, what do I do? Someone send this email. How do I reply? Can we create an article that would help the agent reply that email without having to ask a superior? Knowledge can help you solve that. Knowledge can help you prepare documents that you can associate. Even when you get that email, you can just insert that article in that email and send to the user. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. So the agent will know the type of knowledge article to insert in an email. Everything will be well formatted for you. This is building the service center for a business, making things seamlessly, making things work seamlessly. Okay, so remember, you can use data category to prevent people from seeing type of article they cannot see. If you want them not to see billing articles, then you stop them from seeing billing articles using data categories and data category group. Then I think that's an overview of the knowledge base. Now we need to get more practical because knowledge is about practical stuff. Normally, I don't teach theoretical stuff this much, but Salesforce requires us to know the basic, the foundation. If I go into knowledge without giving you the foundation, you can easily get lost, okay? So I need to kind of like give you the overview, then we go into the Salesforce platform. So let's get started with knowledge. Let me log into my Trailhead, and I will introduce you to knowledge based on everything I have just said. And also we're going to do a case study of working with knowledge, okay? So I'm just going to go to my Black Force Code 3. I don't know if we've enabled knowledge in the past, but if we haven't enabled knowledge, the first thing we need to do is enable knowledge, okay? So I'll close all this and I will go to the service setup. Remember, if you're working as a service consultant, the most setup you would be using is a service setup. You don't use the normal setup unless the things you want to do is in the normal setup. Okay? So the first thing you probably want to check is, do I have enough license for my knowledge? So I told you that the knowledge is a feature license. Okay? It's a feature license. And for our hands-on hub, we have 2 licenses for knowledge. If you don't have knowledge licenses, you cannot use knowledge. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, you want to set up knowledge. How do you set up knowledge? You can do a lot of setup just by looking at the home page. For instance, you can create a new user, you can customize case status and the likes, but for knowledge setup, you can see knowledge setup here. In case you visit a new platform or a new org and you cannot see knowledge setup here, you go to view all and you can type in knowledge. Okay, you see knowledge setup. This is knowledge setup and you click on start. Okay, you assign a user to your knowledge, you click on next, and it's setting up knowledge for you. Okay, so it takes about few seconds or few minutes and it's done. So it's not asking you enter a category. Okay, again, it's saying get organized, meaning that your knowledge articles should be organized. Don't just create article from nowhere. Try to be organized with your articles. Okay, then you click, you can either add a category if you want, but for now, let's just click next just to set up our knowledge. Now that we have knowledge, you can go to knowledge and see everything that is under knowledge, okay? I told you about categories. We're going to go there shortly, but you can see categories mapping, you can see categories assignment, and we go to knowledge settings. So knowledge settings is just us trying to edit the features of knowledge. I click on edit and I enable inline article editing. What that means is that I can easily type article and use the bold, italics, underline, insert links, and the likes into an article. Okay? Then I have other things I want to do. You can include case fields and stuff like that. We can come back to this later. This is not very important. Then we can say allow user to create case, but this is for classic. Again, I don't work on classic, so all these classic settings is not important for me. Then I can do other things, okay? I can allow users to share articles via public URL. This is important for me. And I can say, okay, I can put knowledge here, but I'll let you, we're gonna get here shortly. Then you can look at other settings if you want to, but more importantly, if you want to allow thumbs up and down voting for article, you can include it here. But then again, it's based on classic only. But I don't work on Classic, so I'll just kind of like limit it to Lightning, okay? Then I save. Now that I've enabled knowledge settings, what else do I need to do? I need to now create a sample knowledge. But before I can create a sample knowledge, I want to ensure that knowledge is on my console tab. So I go to my app manager and I make sure that in my service app, which we're using as a case study, we have knowledge on the navigation menu. This is very important, okay? And I look for, okay, knowledge is already there. That's good. So now that we have knowledge, I can go to Service Console app and I have knowledge. And I can create a new knowledge. But before you go into creating new knowledge, you can see knowledge is just like another object. If I open another service setup and I go to Object Manager, that's knowledge. Knowledge is just storing data in an object, okay? So now, going back to the front end, I can create a new knowledge. And what type of knowledge is this? I am trying to create a frequently asked question knowledge. Like I told you, you need to decide what type of article. By knowledge, anytime you hear me say knowledge, just assume that I'm saying an article, okay? Because knowledge is an article. An article is creating a knowledge means creating an article. Creating an article means creating a knowledge record, okay? So I have this article and it is telling me the new knowledge I'm creating is a frequently asked question. A frequently asked question should be, when would the next cohort start? Okay, that's a frequently asked question. And the agent will say, Blackforce operates based on cohorts, and the next cohort will be decided, or whatever Blackforce operation wants to say. Okay, the next cohort will be decided immediately when the current cohort ends, or something like that. Okay, okay, something like that, and you say, okay, that's the answer for when will the next cohort start. As you can see, you are now creating a frequently asked question that can be used by the operation agent, meaning that anytime a case comes into the system, anytime a case comes in that asks you when is the next this thing starting, all you just need to do is go to email. Yesterday we learned about automation of inserting templates and everything. Going to email, we can just insert the knowledge here or attach that knowledge to this case when you close this case. So next time someone is asking for when the next cohort starts, you can relate. You can say last case that was closed as a result of when the next cohort starts, use this article to close that case. Then the agent will be able to read that article and address that article because of the knowledge that was attached to that article. Okay, so that's one way of using the frequently asked question. Okay, that's one way of using the frequently asked question. If you want to add knowledge to this page, all you just need to do is edit the page, and you go to knowledge, then you drag knowledge here, okay? And you drag knowledge here and you activate. Close. So there are no knowledge right now, but if there are knowledge, you would see knowledge, or you can also look for the previously knowledge you have written. Okay, you can look